Welcome to Beauty and the Gi, the podcast about jiu-jitsu and life on and off the mat. I'm Jen Eads, a white belt full of curiosity and questions about all the things jiu-jitsu.
And I'm AJ Klingerman, Brazilian jiu-jitsu brown belt, obsessed with jiu-jitsu.
And today we are talking about how to be a good teammate.
Yeah, I thought this would be a great subject for us to dive into.
Yeah, especially now we're getting back to competing. And even for those of us that aren't competing, there's still a lot that we can do to show up and just be good teammates in general.
Yeah. You know, like we might fight alone out on the mat, but it is absolutely a team sport. And I think we have a really good team atmosphere. All of us could use improvement. You know, like that's just something we can always work on. But I know a lot of people that don't have that good cohesive team. And I think you just have to start by kind of leading the way, like being the example and being a good teammate. And yeah.
What's the number one thing that you think we can do to lead by example and be a good teammate?
I think show up. I think show up, like be present is one of the biggest parts. And, you know, there's a lot to that, but I mean, you can't be a good teammate if you aren't showing up in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. If you're not even there.
Exactly. And like, you know, if there's a reason you're not there, like if you're out for various reasons, like from COVID or from an injury or something like that. Right. Exactly. From surgery. That doesn't mean that you can't still be a good teammate, because you can be checking in on people and, you know, just following up, just, you know, reaching out, I guess. So you can still be a good teammate. And also, you know, just sending videos. I think, you know, like, I mean, really, like if you like see something on Instagram or something, you're like, oh man, this spider guard thing would be perfect for Mariah or whatever. So
right. Yeah.
I think showing up in some way, shape, or form is probably the most important part about being a good teammate.
I would agree with that. What else? What else is on the list? I feel like we have this giant list.
Yeah, I made quite a huge list that to kind of go off of.
If you're new to the show, AJ loves lists.
I can't help it. I have no memory, so if I don't write it down, it didn't happen.
So true.
So, you know, like let's just talk about kind of the class, you know, welcoming new people. Mm-hmm. I think that's important, you know, like grabbing the new person and helping them, like show them the warm-ups, help them walk through warm-ups, making sure that they have a partner. And even if that's not you, like being able to connect them with someone else, I think that's important just from the beginning. So being a good teammate to new people coming through the door, because it's scary. Like it's hard to do that. And then you feel so lost and everybody else seems to know what they're doing. And
right.
Yeah. So I think that's a good thing, you know, like introduce yourself, help them through warm-ups, make sure they have a partner. And then talking about, okay, I'm kind of trying to think like progressing through class, how to be a good partner.
Yeah.
So not talking while the instructor is talking.
Uh-huh.
For one, it distracts the person you're talking to, but it also distracts the people around you. And it just makes it harder for them to learn. And honestly, as a coach, it makes it hard for me to instruct. You know, like if there's a little conversation going on, I'm like, do you guys have questions? Are you missing something? Is something wrong? You know, like it distracts me as a coach too. So I think not talking while the coach is talking is an important one.
I do well enough just to pay attention and try to get, you know, hands go here and feet go here, and then just trying to put it all together. I can't imagine trying to have a conversation on the side.
Yeah. I mean, you know, for one, I think as you progress, you come to a class that you've seen before.
Yeah.
Right. Like you've done this one. If you've been around, you know, we run off of a curriculum. So at least once a year, you should see every move. So if you are a purple belt, then you've seen the move several times. And so I can see how it would be easy to just be like, oh, I don't need to pay attention to this. I can just have a conversation. But it's not easy for everyone else.
So just like as a white belt, I'm so glad to start seeing things over again. I'm like, oh yeah, we did this. But now it kind of actually makes more sense of where everything goes. And it's always, what I'm finding is it's the littlest tiny detail makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah. And it's funny how sometimes I think, did that coach teach that detail before and I just missed it? Or are they adding that detail?
Yeah.
Like, have you always taught it that way and I've just missed it every time? Or did you just add that? But, so one of our girls talks during class sometimes and I have to like, hey, and she's like, I can't help it. Like when I think of something, I have to make sure like somebody else knows. And so what I advised for her to do, because she keeps a notebook, is to use like the left-hand side of her notebook for those quick notes. And that's what I do. Like especially at a camp. So like if you look at my origin camp notes, the entire right side is the moves that we're doing, like what we're learning. And then the left side is everything I think about, like, oh, I really like how he teaches this, or he needs to think about doing this, like I think it would help if just little stuff like that. Or like at our camp, I want to make sure that people aren't sitting too close and you can't see the instructor. And just so the left-hand side becomes my like brain dump. So I advise that if you have problems, with not talking during class, that's a good way to balance it.
I love it. That's brilliant.
Thanks. It's helped me. So then, we talked about making sure that especially the new people have partners. Mm-hmm. And then if you see somebody that's like walking around that doesn't have a partner, or if they're sitting on the wall still and they didn't like come out to try and find a partner, invite them to triple up. Even if there's already a pair of 3 or something, like they obviously don't feel comfortable. They're obviously nervous. Like invite them to work with you and your partner.
Yeah. Especially if you're the new kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because now this will shock you. I was listening to the Brene Brown podcast episode yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
And she had Brandy Carlisle on, and it's great. And they were talking about feeling, even as a grown-up, like that 11-year-old that's awkward carrying the lunch tray.
And looking.
And you're just hoping that somebody's going to invite you to sit at their table. And I was like, Jiu-Jitsu's like 100 times worse than just even the lunch tray cafeteria thing.
Yeah, it is. Or it can be, like you're just kind of like, who do I partner with? Like who wants to do this with me? And, I read on like Women's Grappling Network and stuff, people will post, I'm the biggest girl at my school or something like that. Like nobody wants to pair with me. And I think a lot of that is perceived, you feel like no one wants to pair with you. So just make sure, as the other person to like invite somebody in and have them work with you.
Yeah.
So then from a drilling standpoint, don't be a dead fish. So like while they're drilling on you, don't just like lay there, like act like a jiu-jitsu person. It's like you laugh, but like it's a really great way to think about it. And like when you first start, you don't know what that means. Like I teach a Kimura from guard in the intro lesson, and people fall over all the time when I'm first doing that. So like they don't realize like how to move like a jiu-jitsu person yet. Mm-hmm. But as you progress over a little bit, you realize like, oh, I wouldn't just lay down here. So don't be a dead fish or a wet noodle or whatever. On the other side of that, though, don't fight the move. Mm-hmm. So I see that all the time. And people will be like, well, how do I do it if he fights it? Well, he shouldn't be fighting it because you're just trying to drill it. Let's start there. Like we want to be able to get the move right before somebody's fighting it. Mm-hmm. And then we can address, like, well, what if he does this or he does this or whatever? But don't fight it. Let them drill the move and learn the proper technique before that starts.
Yeah.
So that's some of the stuff like in that part of class. I think rolling, ways to be a good teammate in that is asking your partner if they have any issues, like, do you have anything I should avoid? Like we had a class the other day at Endurance, and so you had your shoulder. Uh-huh. So like we're not touching your shoulder right now. Eric had just done a judo tournament and broke his foot. Uh-huh. Jen had hurt her throat from 2 days in a row of all of the throat chokes. And there was one more, right? I think there was one more. And I was like, what do I do with you guys? Like, we can't do leg attacks, arm attacks, chokes. There's like so many things. What do we do? But, like just knowing that when you're rolling with somebody and being good about trying to avoid that. Mm-hmm. Like I always, like when I hurt my shoulder, or like you, I think it's the same one. It was like, don't go to the mountainside, like my mountain of my Fuji logo, like just stay away from the mountain. So letting people know. So on the flip side, like ask people what their issues are, but also tell people, because not everyone's going to remember to ask. So if you're going to roll with somebody, be like, hey, please don't do this to me. If you could avoid this, that'd be great. Or, if you go there, I'm going to tap instantly. As you progress, like for me, I try at this point to be a little more like, it's my job to protect myself. I'm a brown belt. Like I should be able to mostly protect myself. But if I'm rolling with the black belts, I'm going to be like, hey, don't do this. Yeah. And then be good to your word. So like, if you're like, hey, do you want to just like flow around a little bit, like flow roll? And then you try to murder them.
Yeah. Yeah, won't make that mistake again.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah,
and I will say flow rolling is hard. Like it is a skill in itself because you just start to like amp up. But knowing, and I try to keep it in my mind the whole time. Like I'm not trying to smash you the whole time. I'm not trying to attack things. I'm going to catch and release. Like that's what flow rolling is. So like if I get to mount, then I might just like fall off of mount and let you come to guard. And like I'm just in my head the whole time. I'm like, you have something, I have something. We just kind of ebb and flow. So, but stay true to your word. Like don't murder somebody after you ask them to flow roll. Have you had that happen before?
No. I mean,
Good.
And still at this point, everything feels like murder. So,
So I think probably one more part of that is do real jiu-jitsu. Don't just try to like flop around or it's hard to like, I realize at a beginner level, that's tough. You don't exactly know what you're doing, but really try to focus on doing actual techniques, doing things that you have learned, if that makes sense. Like, I don't just want to be like, oh, I bet if I clothesline her, she's going to fall over, right? Like, so, like actually doing things that are jujitsu and focus on the techniques. And you can develop techniques as you get better, but just making sure that you're doing good, solid jujitsu, even if that solid jujitsu is very little. Like, even if you have very little knowledge, sticking to the basics is important. And I think that's a big part of what helps us not injure our teammates is just doing good, solid jujitsu.
As a teammate, I have hopefully some idea, especially if it's something that we've drilled. I kind of know what's coming and what to expect.
Right. Yep.
And that
so
helps.
You know how to move, you know how to protect yourself.
Yeah.
And we want to protect our partners. Like, we don't want to injure them. We don't want them to have to be out, from a knee injury or anything like that. So, yeah.
Well, even in class, I think it was last week, we were doing something and it was like, for drilling, don't try to post, just, Yep.
Yeah, I said, like, just hug them. Like, go ahead and, like, hug around their waist because, if you post out for that, like, you're basically on a wrist lock yourself.
Yeah.
You're more likely to get hurt. And, like, if you're rolling and you're fighting it, you might be more likely to post. But right now, while we're just drilling, just go ahead and cup around the waist and let them do that. I guess one thing I didn't mention, like, pre-training would be, be clean. Don't be the stinky kid in class. I mean, that's part of being a good teammate, man. Because nobody wants to roll with the stinky kid. Like, trim your nails, wear proper attire. We don't require rash guards under the gi at our gym, but I always wish that we did, and always try to strongly encourage it. I know that you can't, like, dudes can't wear rash guards under their gi when they compete. And James kind of uses that as like a trigger, like when the rash guard's off, that means it's go time, right?
Yeah.
But so I always really encourage everyone to wear a rash guard under their gi, personally. It just makes me more comfortable. I don't want my face on your chest while we're rolling. One more thing back to rolling. rolling and kind of drilling, but basically like thinking about not rewarding somebody or like falsely rewarding them, I guess. If I'm rolling with you and you go for a sweep, but you didn't load me, you didn't trap my arm, I'm not going to go over, right? Like even if I am going to allow you to do things, I'm not going to if you don't do it correctly. That gives you a false sense of
that you're doing it right.
Yeah, exactly. Like it gives them a false sense of security, right? Like that I can do this and not do it correctly and I'm still going to get it. So it kind of goes back to that like doing real jiu-jitsu. But so on the other side of that, don't reward people for not doing it correctly. Like I will let you pass my guard if you pass my guard correctly.
Yeah.
I will let you sweep me if you actually do the techniques. I'll let you lock up a submission if you lock it up correctly. So don't just let somebody have something because you're trying to let them work, because then they're going to have this false sense of hope with the next person that they roll with. And that's going to be a problem.
How do you navigate that as a training partner? Because you don't want to feel like you're coaching them, but at the same time, do you just tell them? Because I know like with Jennifer and I, we've rolled enough that I know when something feels right or you know, something's off. And I can say, and she did the same thing for me the other day. She's like, you're not getting your foot in the right place. How do you, especially if it's somebody that maybe you don't know that well?
Yeah, I think it's definitely harder when it's someone you don't know that well. As someone that you do know and that you train with a lot, it's easy to be like, hey, I think this is why I'm not going over, or this is why this isn't working. If it's somebody higher rank than you, because that happens, like where, you know, you might be a white belt, but you know this move. This is your move, right? And this blue or purple belt, maybe they came from another school or something, and they're not getting it right. And you're like, I can't correct them. I'm a white belt, right? Like you just have this like, ooh. In that instance, like I would call the coach over and be like, hey, this doesn't feel right. I think maybe it's this, but will you watch and see what's happening? I think that's kind of a good way, like take it off of yourself a little bit. I think it's perfectly fine to help people through things just in how it feels. Like, I didn't really feel like I was going to go over there. I wonder what's happening, you know, like kind of playing it down just a little bit so it doesn't feel like you're super correcting them or anything. But I do think, you know, it's good to give that feedback. So,
yeah, and I mean, I want it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I want to know why it's not working. Like, what am I not doing? And especially like you think like cross chokes, like it's not deep enough. It's not deep enough. Like you gotta get your fingers touching. So just, you know, little things like that to be able to be like, I think this needs to happen. And if you don't feel comfortable with it, call the coach over and have them. And then don't overcorrect. Like no matter what rank you're coaching to or you are or anything like that, like you can say it once or twice. If they're still not doing it, you just have to let it go. Like it's not your responsibility. You've tried, but you know, sometimes it's hard to accept that. So, but on the flip side of that, be coachable, right? Like that's another way to be a good teammate is listening to the person you're going with that's saying, hey, I think this isn't working quite right. Can you, you know, try this? Or like if your coach is like, I don't think that move is for you. Like, you know, like not that you can't do any jiu-jitsu, but like if we're talking game plan. So like as a coach, like I'm going to help you with your game plan. I'm going to help you with what moves I think you'll be best at, or what I see you pulling off all the time. I had someone ask me, Fletch asked, like, should 50-50 be in my game plan? And I was like, absolutely not. Like, one, you can't hardly do any leg attacks as a white belt. So, like, let's not, you know, so being able to just be like, okay, good. Let's, you know, just accept that. And your coach is more knowledgeable. They're going to know.
So as far as competition goes, how can we show up and be good teammates?
Yeah. So I think, well, like before competition, because not everybody competes, right? But that doesn't mean you can't help your teammates get ready. So, you know, you can sit down with them and just talk about their game plan. That's helpful. Just showing up and letting them drill their game plan 1,000,000 times. We spent an hour with Jordan and Andrea, with Jordan just hitting her with like every armbar and Andrea just escaping every armbar, right? So like that's being an amazing teammate, is just letting her like work those escapes over and over. Poor Jordan like got murdered for an hour, but also said how much fun she had doing it. She was like, that was so much fun. You know, and they're happy to help. Getting Jennifer ready for competition a couple weeks ago, like Steve messaged me afterwards and was like, I loved helping her get ready. Like that's good for all of us, but like that was a lot of fun. I appreciate doing that. So show up and like 2 classes and let people drill their escapes or their, you know, their game plan in general. Something we've had trouble with personally, like at our academies in the past, is like as competition rolled around, nobody would show up to class. Not nobody, but you know, a couple weeks before, people started ghosting. And I think that's kind of because like they feel guilty they're not competing. They're worried about getting talked into competing. You know, whatever that looks like, you would just notice class size would go down quite a bit. And I think it's more important to show up and be like, hey, I'm not competing, but I am here to help you prepare.
Yeah.
So I think it's important, like leading up to the competition. Then day of, if you can go to the competition, like I know it's a weird world right now, so not every competition allows spectators and stuff, but assuming you can go and support your team, like show up. Again, that's going to be our theme for this. Just show up. You know, wear like team gear so that, you know, it's easy to spot you. Personally, I wear like all my role model stuff at competitions right now because my team is my team, as in Team James Klingerman, absolutely. But my team is also all of the women in jiu-jitsu. Like that is very important to me. So I want people to see me in my role model t-shirt or tank top. And if they don't have a coach, to be able to be like, hey, will you coach me? Or even if I just notice, like I will see 2 people going and look and there's an empty chair. And I'm like, well, I'm sitting in this chair. That person needs a coach.
Yeah, I love it.
So, you know, but, you know, wear the attire, like kind of like the uniform, not really the, you know what I mean? But just like being, easy to spot, easy to recognize, especially for people that aren't like from your school, or maybe they train during the day or something like that. They see that you're wearing the school gear. They can be like, hey, you train there, that I train there. Also, you know, like be willing to record for people. I personally love when our people have their matches on video so that I can go back and really dive into what happened. Even if I've like got to see their match and got to coach them, by the end of the day, I don't remember any of them.
Yeah.
So I'll go through all the videos anyone sends me and look and see like what we can improve on, what they did really well, what stays in the game plan, what goes, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But so be willing to just grab someone's phone and record for them. Take pictures, you know, like that's always a good thing. Also, even, you know, going a step above and beyond would be like bring snacks, bring extra waters, bring tape or fingernail clippers or something like that. I'm such the like mother, you know, that, and, you know, for years, I wasn't active in the competition. I was just, you know, I was the one that would like bring everything you could possibly need. I'm not as great at that now that I compete more, but I try to still make sure I have the things that people might need. But that's how we made a lot of friends in jiu-jitsu too. Like back in the old days, in like early 2000s at like the Arnold's or the Gracie Nationals or something like that, I would literally have like a suitcase of like snacks and waters and just everything and just hand them out and make friends.
This does not even surprise me one bit.
That's, you know, that's probably how I first met like Chewy and, you know, like all those guys, just passing out food.
Yeah, the person with snacks is always popular.
Exactly. But, you know, like I think little stuff like that can be, you know, extra hair ties, whatever. It just kind of comes in clutch, man, just to be able to have somebody there that kind of has thought of that, or like braid someone's hair for them, or, you know, anything like that is helpful. It takes a little pressure off of the person and lets them think through their game plan while you're braiding their hair. Or so little stuff like that, I think, can help make a good teammate, help them warm up. even if it's just some grip fighting, just to get them kind of active. Help coach. So, obviously me or Rissa or James or, Makarski, like we all try to be mat side for every match, but there were 11 mats at the last tournament we went to. There's no way we can make it to everyone. So we're trying, we're running around like crazy, but be willing to sit in that spot until a normal coach gets there and yell out time and points. If nothing else, like if you don't feel like it's somebody that you can coach because they're higher ranked than you or the same rank as you or whatever, just be willing to be like, watch your arm, or they got the sweet points for that, or, like whatever, there's your 2, you have 1 minute left, we got to move, whatever that is. I think that can be very helpful too. Can you think of anything that like I missed?
No, I mean, that list was fantastic.
I tried to make a pretty thorough list. I was asking James too, like some of the things, like what he thought about that make a good teammate. So, but yeah, like I said, this is a team sport, and I think we all need each other. It's kind of that like rising tide raises all ships. Like we all need each other. The better we get, the better we all get. Posting after the tournament, like supporting people. We have the Indie Federation tournament coming up, and like Eric Board every day is posting how many people from the team we have registered. And he's like posting the list every day. And I'm like,
nice.
that's being a good teammate, because it is encouraging everybody. Right. Like, I want to be on that list, like I want to be a part of that.
Oh, sure.
So there's so many different ways. If you haven't seen somebody in a while, if you haven't, you realize like, hey, they haven't been in training for a couple weeks, check in on them.
Mm-hmm.
Send them a Facebook message or an Instagram message, or, because a lot of us don't have each other's phone numbers.
Right.
But, like just check in and make sure they're okay. Like they might just be going through something. They might, need to know that their presence is missed.
Good advice.
Thanks. Also, here's an interesting one. Watch what you say in teasing others because of who can hear you. So like you and I might be great friends, and I might tease you about something that, I know doesn't hurt your feelings, but it might hurt the feelings of the person next to you.
Oh,
So
that's a good one.
It is. It's good. And it's hard, like, because you're like, oh, they know I'm kidding. Well, they know you're kidding. But does everyone else in the room?
Right.
So, that's kind of like a deeper be a good teammate, but it's a very valid one.
Well, and it kind of goes back to the recent episode we did on creating inclusive spaces.
Absolutely.
So if you haven't listened to that episode with Tori and Jess, go back and listen to that. It's packed full of good stuff.
Yeah.
So is the on the mat tip for this week, or at least attempt to do all of the things that we talked about.
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
Okay. And I would say for off the mat, take those things that we've talked about and try to practice them out in the real world. And be a good teammate, whether it's your coworkers, your family, your friends, and try to practice those things out there.
I love that.
Oh, I want to give a shout out too.
Okay.
To everyone, especially because somebody had posted about Jiu-Jitsu podcast in one of the Facebook groups. I forget which one. So thank you to everybody that was writing beauty in the gi and tagging and sharing it. I feel like that's being a good teammate. Like it's very supportive of what we're doing with this. So it's really appreciated. It
really is. And I love, especially when you start getting a lot of comments, people don't go back to previous comments. So, I appreciate that multiple people were putting beauty in the gi. So I just kept seeing it like, oh, I love that. It makes me so happy.
And I'm excited to see more podcasts coming out too.
Yeah.
And speaking of more new jiu-jitsu podcasts, is there something you'd like to share with us?
Sure. I have a new podcast. I have a new podcast with Brisser called Role Model Radio. And the intent is to basically update everyone on what we're doing for camp. We work on camp every single day, but we tend to do a bad job of telling people what we're working on. So we just kind of talk a little bit about what's coming up for camp, some of our sponsors. We have amazing sponsors, and where you'll find us in the wild. So that podcast comes out every Monday morning and everywhere you find podcasts. So where you're listening now, you can also subscribe to Role Model Radio.
And I'll have a link to it in the show notes.
Thank you.
Because that's what I do.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. Also, you have a new podcast coming out too, right?
I do have a new podcast coming out May 1st.
May 1st.
I'll put a link. May 1st. I'll put a link to it in the show notes.
Nice.
It's a daily.
At least
it. That's the plan right now. It's feeling a little like a big undertaking.
You're going to do amazing.
So we'll see. Thank you.
I'm
Thanks,
excited.
teammate.
Yeah, you're welcome. Stay tuned because our next episode that we have coming out is going to be huge.
So good. I can't wait.
I'm so excited.
I am too.
So teaser, it's going to be amazing.
Make sure you're subscribed or you're following this podcast if you haven't already, because you are not going to want to miss this one.
I know.
And where can you find us?
You can find me everywhere at AJ Klingerman. And you can find us together on Instagram at Beauty and the Gi Podcast. And you can find us on Facebook, Beauty and the Gi Gang. And where can we find you?
At Brassy Broad Jen, mostly on Instagram. It's a happy place.
It is a happy place.
Yeah. And if you're super professional, you can find me on LinkedIn at Jen Eads.
Fancy.
So fancy and professional. Thanks for listening, and we will see you on the mat.